This is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It's Tuesday, October 1st, 2024 at 5 p.m. And our first order of business is a call to order by roll call. So with the roll call, Mary Hartman,
Here.
Mike Lawson,
Here.
Rich Feely,
Here.
Linda Escobedo,
Present.
Harry LaFleur,
Here.
and Keith Bergman present. All right, so the six of us are here. Welcome other folks who are here to join us tonight. I will be, well, let's go on to the minutes, and then we'll see if Liz Rust arrives to talk to us about the home consortium agenda item she's asked to have on this agenda. So we have two sets of minutes to approve. First is a set from the August 15th Housing Roundtable. Liz Rust drafted those minutes. That's why they're short and concise and don't go on for 3 or 4 pages like mine do. But I thank Liz for doing those, and all of us were at that meeting except Mike.
I wasn't.
So I
there.
wonder.
I don't think I was there, was I?
Yeah, you were there. You were there. You didn't say much, but I looked up on the screen and we saw you.
I guess I was there.
Yeah. So feel free to not vote on it though, if your choice, Rich. But I wonder if there is a motion to approve those August 15th minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Mary. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Carrie. All right. Is there any discussion? And thanks again to Liz for these are the roundtable minutes, and thanks for preparing those for all of the boards. All right. So on that motion to approve the August 15th minutes, we'll do a roll call vote. Mary?
Yes.
Mike, abstention?
Abstain.
Linda?
Aye.
Carrie?
Yes.
Rich?
I'll abstain unless you need I guess
Okay, no.
I looked at my calendar. I guess I was there, but I don't have a clear recollection of it.
Right.
You were definitely there. You were definitely there.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So are you an aye, Rich?
Yeah, I'll vote aye. I had no problem with the minutes.
Okay, an aye for an aye. I'll vote aye as well. So that's that motion passes with 5 in favor, 1 abstention, and 0 opposed. Next is a longer, the standard long form of minutes for our September 3rd meeting, and I sent those out over the weekend, and I hope you had a chance to look at that. But I wonder if there's a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Mike. Any discussion? All right, so on the motion to approve the September 3rd meeting minutes, we'll do a roll call. Mary?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And Keith, aye. So that is approved 6-0. Thanks very much. Later in our meeting, we'll be talking about the status of grant funding, including the community preservation application. I'll just mention, in case I forget later, our CPC application will be on their agenda for a week from tonight, for October 8th at 7 o'clock at the CPC meeting to review our application for $740,000. I was offered the 8th or the 22nd, and I've got a conflict. Yet another committee I'm on, the town meeting study committee has a public forum on the 22nd, so I picked the 8th. So if any of you can be there, that would be great. I have a canned presentation to do, and I'll circulate that prior to the meeting. And also to mention about funding, thanks very much to the town for the what will be a $500,000 grant award to be made prior to December 31st of this year, with the funds to be used within 2 years, with the priority for workforce housing at the 91B Main Street surplus state property. So thanks very much to our town manager, Kerry LaFleur. Thanks to the select board for their support of Kerry's list, proposed list of spending, and where I'm delighted that a total of $1 million in ARPA funds will have gone from the town of Concord to the trust, and that says a lot about the town's thinking about affordable housing, and we appreciate your support very much on that. So thank you, Carrie and Mary and town of Concord. So let us go to the Home Consortium Consolidated Plan and Concord Needs Assessment. This is an item I put on our agenda at the request of our Regional Housing Services Office Director, Liz Rust. Looks like every 5 years, there's a plan that is done for all of the participating communities. The city of Newton is the lead. Many RHSO communities, including Concord, are part of that process to take advantage of affordable housing opportunities for projects that support low and moderate income folks in our community. So thanks to Liz for bringing this to our attention, and please walk us through what we're getting ourselves into.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. It's really nice to see you. I am here to talk about the Home Consolidated Plan. This is a 5-year plan, and it's a requirement to have a publicly noticed meeting on this plan, and this is being satisfied through this meeting here. So thank you very much for providing that platform. The home program is, for just as a recap, is administered by Newton, and it's the federal funds that come through HUD, and they channel in through Newton and to the 13 communities that are part of the Home Consortium. And there are a number of administrative requirements that you do to use those funds, and the consolidated plan sets the framework for the funds. It sets out the 5-year plan for the funds, and then you have from that an annual action plan. It sets out the here's our strategic plan for our funds, and then you have it sets out, every year we'll do this, and then we'll do this, and we'll do this based on your plan, and then every year you do an action plan, which you'll talk to your 5-year plan, like how'd you do on that, and then at the end of the year in August, you say how you did to that plan. And then the last piece would be a fair housing assessment, which is also required. And also there's an annual set of agreements that are signed. So there's sort of these 5 very intensive administrative tasks in coming to be able to use the funds, which are very hard to use anyway. So it's a program that takes a lot of determination to stay in, right? And we stay in for the purposes of the regional partners that we are in with. So I think that from an annual perspective, Concord gets about $30,000 exclusive use. And the other benefit that you get is an opportunity to participate with a competitive RFP process. If you have a project, Junction Village was able to participate with that and get $400,000 through the competitive RFP process. So even though the funds weren't initially allocated to Concord, by being part of the home consortium, you could apply for those funds. Projects are eligible, low income, so under 60% AMI rental. So that's the basic requirement. So ownership is not really an eligible project, and above 60% AMI not eligible. So it's very narrow, and so they become hard to use. Yeah, so they're often augmented with projects that are using state subsidies. So for projects that are using like low-income housing tax credits, we'll also bring in consortium funds. So we're here to do the consolidated plan, and I put together, I don't know, did you pass out the material? Was that included, Keith, the material that I provided? Or am I just going to talk to it?
Yes,
Yes, it's called a housing needs assessment. It's like a page and a half of questions that, we'll just see what thoughts you have. The process that we're going to use, that we're using, and again, this is one of the benefits of the RHSO, is being able to do this in conjunction with the other towns. So we do this for 6 towns. There are 13 communities in the consortium. So in our basket are half the communities. So when we're, we have a powerful basket, and when we respond to these administrative activities. And in fact, some of the communities look to join the RHSO just for the home administration, because it is so hard if you don't have the staff to administer your housing programs.
Liz, are you able to share that document? I know I sent it out, but I'm on such an unstable internet connection that I can't share any documents when I am.
I think I can. Yep. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So there are 3 parts of our process here. Of course, now I lost you. Where are you? Here you are. Here's the document. One is this public process, which is governed by what they call the Citizen Participation Plan for the consortium. The other is an interview with the Housing Authority, because there's a section that's just particular to questions for them and their inventory. And then a discussion with town staff and other specialized folks, including ourselves, to answer some of these questions. So it's not anticipated that you would have all the answers to these questions, or so don't feel like, oh, I should know this and I don't know this, like maybe, So I'm just going to we'll go section by section and see if you have thoughts about some of these questions and what they bring up for you, and if you have input that you'd like to provide, you or the people in your participants. And now I've lost everybody. Like, do you have participants here? It's so hard sometimes to share and see all at the same time, right? So the first section, so I just will say how the documents are done by Newton. They give you bite-sized pieces for each of the member communities, and you answer these, and then they bring it all together to prepare the longer plans that are hundreds of pages long, with the appendices and all the narrative. So it might seem very abbreviated with this NA10, because that's just the section that this is going to feed into in the document, which will have proper introductions and the other parts. When we do this together, we're looking at, and another benefit is, housing is very much a regional, especially at this level, very regional. And the housing needs in Concord are going to be very similar to the housing needs in Sudbury and other like communities. I mean, living a half a mile apart with similar property values, similar demographics, the housing problems and the housing needs are going to be similar in many respects, so that there's a lot of synergies by doing this exercise together. Also, Concord has a recent housing production plan. We've just completed one in Sudbury, or almost completed, and so that those help with the current data that we'll be using for this. And one approach would have been to present the data to you, but really here is really to hear from you and not for us to be presenting to you. So I didn't take that approach of presenting to you and you know, doing it that way. So right, so here's 5 questions. So they're called 1 through 4 and number 8 of what they call housing needs assessment. This is part of section NA10, and really just talking about common housing problems. So maybe this is just things that you hear about, things that you might be aware of, or what your thoughts are about what are common housing problems, what populations or household types are more affected about these problems. Certainly, you spend a lot of time on housing goals and strategies, and what kind of areas that you'd like to address in terms of Concord's fabric of housing. Now, whether it's going to be addressed with the home funds and eligible, I think we can put that aside, because I think a lot of the strategies that you're looking at aren't home eligible. But I think that for this purpose, that doesn't really matter. Number 3, you don't have, that's tenant-based rental assistance. You don't have one, so you can sort of skip that. And what kind of housing characteristics they call that are linked to instability. So again, they give you some examples here. So I'm just going to open it up and see if you have any comments here. Yeah.
Yeah, just to start off, my look at it is that it's the lack of inventory that for me is the overarching concern. The lack of inventory for not only for people who would want to move to the community, but also for people who might want to downsize and empty nesters who want to stay in Concord need to have more opportunities. So that's just a couple of thoughts. Rich?
Yeah, I mean, my concern is the actual physical loss of potentially affordable units. We don't have enough inventory anyway, but we're losing the lower end of the inventory we have to teardowns. And that's a serious problem, because even if we were to come up with a way of subsidizing some of those places, there are fewer and fewer of them left. Again, that doesn't apply so much to the under 60%, but it certainly does to 100 and 120 and 140.
Thanks, Rich. Linda?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that comes to my mind is crosstown transportation, and not just for COA activities, but so that individuals can be more part of the community life. And so that would be both during the day and evening.
Thanks, Linda. Other thoughts? Mary?
I haven't heard much about what's happening with our migrant population we have at the Best Western. So I don't even know if that fits here, but it's certainly, what are these people going to do for more permanent housing?
Yeah, thank you. Good point.
Now I'll start calling on people. Mike?
No, I share the concerns that Keith raised. I would just add lack of housing, but it's also the diversity of housing for me. It's either some big multi-unit thing or one little house in someplace. So I'm just a lack of supply and the diversity or lack of diversity.
Thank you.
Rich, you have your
Yeah,
hand up again?
I just wanted to second what Linda said, in that we're going to wind up with two of the three biggest housing projects in town being 2 miles from public transportation, i.e. the Prescott and Thorough Club when it gets done, which it probably will. So, you know, we are essentially requiring even people in those affordable units to have cars to get anywhere.
Thanks, Rich. Carrie, did you have any comment?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Great, thank you.
I'll mention the importance of having housing opportunities for people who work in Concord.
Mhm.
Yep.
Something we want to address. So thanks.
Can I add before we go on, senior housing? I know Keith, you mentioned housing for people who are downsizing, but in my mind, senior housing is an older population than people who are downsizing, so.
Mhm.
Just to supplement that, the population over 80 and over 90, I know, Mary, you have some doubts about population projections, but as long as the people who are here now don't leave, and given normal survival rates, those populations are going up by 60 to 80% over the next 25 years.
Yeah. You know, I do a lot of work, well, I do work for other communities, and Lexington is permitting. They've done a lot of permitting through their MBTA zoning. And I think they're going to get about 1,000 units through their MBTA zoning over some short period of time. I think a little surprise to them, actually. One of the more recent projects is a 300-unit apartment building with 50% one bedrooms. And that's what their market study looked at, really, for the downsizing and the senior. So really a huge demand for one bedrooms.
Liz, are any of your communities specifically targeting assisted living?
Natick has an assisted living project, and Lexington just leased up an affordable assisted living. It's a little, and those are hard to bundle services in with the affordable model, and how to price that with you know, the restrictions and all that. With Waterstone, they provide that. But yeah, so Lexington just did that, and Natick is doing that as well.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll just move on to the non-homeless special needs, if you have any thoughts there. So I think we talked a little bit about this, the elderly, senior housing, but there's also persons with mental, physical, and developmental disabilities, alcohol, drug addiction, survivors of domestic violence, and veterans.
Yeah, Carrie?
I wanted to make a comment. I think maybe it was more in the other section. I was thinking you were going through each of those one by
sure.
one. So sorry. I
That's okay.
was also eating an apple, so I wasn't paying attention. But the one comment that I wanted to make, and something I've been thinking about more and more, is people's need and interest to live in community. And I'm thinking of like the tiny home communities. And
Mhm.
I was actually just thinking about that, and about the Peabody property. If is that when that becomes available, is that something that's right for a tiny home community type environment? Because when you if you're familiar with the concept of blue zones, and there's a book on blue zones, and I think a Netflix series or something, and it talks about 4 or 5 places in the world where there's an abnormally high longevity, and it talks about the reasons why in those different areas. In one of the areas, people live longer because they're living in community, and they have access to, to the amenities that are important to them at that point in their life in very close proximity. And I just, I don't know, I'm intrigued by that, and where we have an older population, that's something that I'd like the community to consider. But it's sort of radical, because it's, different zoning would be required for sure.
We talked about that with the housing production plan, like under the title of co-housing, or some people call that Golden Girl housing. Acton has the Half Moon. I think it's called
Oh, yeah.
Half Moon.
Yep.
And that's quite established now. I think it's gone on for a couple of decades, maybe even, where there's a shared common area, and houses that are close together, and it might be a little bit separate, but everyone owns their personal space, but there's communal space, but it's a little bit more communal than a typical condominium. But so there's different models, and I think that there's a lot of interest in that. Yeah, thank you for that.
And I see we have the Housing Authority Chair, Stefan Bader, on the call too. And Stefan, if you're there, I wonder if you had any input on, as we were talking about housing needs here, and including including special needs. Thanks.
That's taken my, there we go. There's the video. I know that the Housing Authority generally does not have any trouble filling elderly units, which are typically 1 bedroom, when they become available. And so the concept that Kerry was just talking about, 1 bedroom or the equivalent thereof, at PBD sounds intriguing to me, but I'm not speaking for the Housing Authority, just for myself. But I think one of the things that I noticed recently is persons with developmental disabilities, I guess. I'm not an expert in this field, but I know that Crosby's hires a number of folks with developmental disabilities, and I've seen a number of them walking or bicycling from Concord Center to, I guess, West Concord, where they have a group home. And so that makes me think that that is a population that it sure would make life easier if there were something closer to the actual jobs for those who can work jobs. And that doesn't come up too often, and we don't have anybody here from the disability community on, but I'll just throw that out there to get it in the discussion.
Minuteman Arc is always looking for additional space and support. And I know that there was a way back talk of, helping over there at 229, but that's further away than that, but yeah.
That's still very much on the table with the 2229 Main Street report.
Is it? Okay, yeah.
I wonder if we have any insight about what housing needs might be addressed by the properties that New England Deaconess has just acquired from Emerson Hospital. Whether it's going to be, is it going to be a 6-story structure to match what's across the street? Is it, are there particular populations that they're looking at? But that might be interesting to explore with them.
Can I interject with a question for those, for that development over there? Is there an affordable requirement for that, for the housing they're building over there?
Well, I think they'll have to do a PRD, which would mean that there would be some required affordable units.
At 80%? Do we? I don't know.
Yeah, unless we change the PRD rules.
Well, I think it depends
Thank-
on,
Well,
you don't always have to do 80%. It depends on really how much open space and what kind of density you're proposing in your plan.
So it's
Okay.
currently zoned for single family housing, isn't
Correct.
Thank
so I
you.
guess they can put an ADU as a use by right on each lot, so.
stay
They
tuned.
might
We
have,
have
they might have like some Dover amendment, path, which would not
Oh, yeah.
not require a PRD,
Right,
so
so-
I'm not really
right.
sure.
Since they're a nonprofit, yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Um,
having a preliminary discussion, some of us, including Matt and myself, with Deaconess on Thursday.
Oh, great, perfect.
Great, good.
My, without knowing in detail, my thought or my impressions are that these populations, that there's always needs here. And right, and the providers, the people who provide housing and services, because oftentimes it's a wrapped kind of piece, right? Both the housing and the services together are always looking for assistance from towns and are often squeezed out with the property values increasing. Sometimes you see these units on the SHI as the DMH group homes, and you'll see them as the confidential items on the SHI without knowing their addresses. So that you'll see that there's beds being provided in the towns and that the numbers, fluctuate without knowing exactly which units they are. Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Liz.
Well, there's a little
Uh,
bit more. There's just a little bit more. If you have anything to say here, I think we may have gone through this. Most of this is really me to complete maybe. Region-wide, the availability of housing does not meet the needs of the population. Describe the need for specific types of housing by income level, housing type, whether you have this kind of detail that you wanted to provide. Don't know. This would be like, 30%, 50%, 80%, this kind of gets down, this is a little bit more granular.
I think my general suggestion would be that if it's lacking anything else, if there, whatever the housing production, however the housing production plan from 2 years ago would respond to it, those answers would be answers that were not out there 5 years ago, and perhaps or would be appropriate to offer here.
Yeah. And availability of units renting below market impact how does the availability, so I think you've answered this here, that you don't have enough. This is, I think, the inventory question, just said in a different kind of language here. And this is examples of rents. And then if your community has a rehab program, so this would be the small grants program that the CHDC offers. We can talk about that. There's not really much of an issue that I see with lead remediation. I think that maybe I don't really know about that here, I'll have to say. And I don't know about 35 or 40. Well, 35 anyway. Number 40 is a little bit more of a nuanced question, I suppose. What are your thoughts for number 40? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the public policies, whether being negative would seem to mean housing and zoning rather. If there are particular things we can point to in the zoning bylaw which have impeded the fact that single family is not a use by right now, except in certain, except in approximately 80 acres that has been zoned for MBTA community zoning.
Anything else that comes to mind?
Liz, going back to the condition of housing,
Yes.
obviously 229 for the lead question.
Oh,
Lead
yeah,
recommendation, yeah.
thank you.
Question on the public policy barrier, would that include EPA and mass DEP regulations around sewage discharge permits and capacity?
So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I'm not sure who to point the finger at, whether it's the feds or the state, but Concord is limited to its
Yeah.
1.2 million gallons per day of
It's the feds.
sewage discharge, and we're at that limit, actually exceeding it in many
Yeah.
of the most recent 6 months. And so
It's a
that's
big
public
problem.
policy
It's a
somewhere.
problem not only for housing, it's definitely, but for businesses as well. Our inability to
Right.
get the ability to clean more sewage has a very large negative impact on housing within the area of town that's covered by water treatment. So I think that's a very important mention.
And
Yeah,
that's
and-
that's
and
a
in
policy, you
job-
think that's a policy issue?
Yes, it's federal policy and
Gotcha.
state policy with respect to how much
Yeah.
water we can treat.
Mhm.
And we're not the only community facing this problem. It's a significant one. And Carrie knows more about it than I do, but I know it affects housing and it affects businesses coming into town.
Thank you.
I think it could be, you could call it federal, state, and local public
Mhm.
policy. It certainly is, because, a community decides to go big into the sewer business or go little.
Yeah.
And with some notion of what kind of community you want to see, what kind of businesses you want to have come there. And if you're doing, if you want biomed, well, you better make sure you get a big sewer capacity.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. I think that's going to conclude our topic. So thank you for your
Very
good
good.
feedback and your good discussion.
Thanks. Well, thanks for thinking of us, Liz. Happy to have this conversation. And we weren't here 5 years ago as a trust to do it. So we'll look forward to seeing you back.
I think that there's
in
probably
the
another
future.
part that's coming that they haven't told me yet, so you might,
Yeah.
you might hear the chapter 2.
Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, I appreciate that we're on the radar screen for the home consortium,
Mhm.
and happy to be of continuing help. So thanks, Liz. Thanks for all you're doing.
Mhm.
All right, next item, subsidized housing inventory. I wanted to give a quick update. And I mentioned a little bit about this at the CHDC meeting this morning. Just our SHI currently stands at 12.81%. And that information heard at the Concord Chairs breakfast a couple of weeks ago from the ZBA chair was that the residences at Thorough 40B might not get decided for many more months. That hearing's been continued at least till October 30. And Theo was suggesting that one of his goals is to make sure that the permit is acted upon before he leaves the ZBA next May. And when he said May, the first thing that popped into my mind was, well, before we get to May, there's April. And April 16th will be the 1-year anniversary of the Novo 40B's approval. And so if Novo does not pull its building permit by next April 16th, those units come off the subsidized housing inventory, albeit temporarily. But if it just the bells and whistles I heard going off in my head were that if there's a gap between when before the thorough 40B getting approved and and before it the Novo 40B pulling its building permit, we might find ourselves at exactly 10% with no wiggle room if a group home or something should fall off or something else happen. The denominator does not change except every 10 years, but we don't have complete control over the units that are in the numerator. Most we do, some we don't. So that we might want to, and I had this discussion with CHDC this morning, we might want to make sure that by April 16th, if there are units that we can get counted, and I know there are efforts underway for 2 units in the 2-family at Assabet River Bluff, be great to, and there's a huge amount of paperwork involved in that. Setting up condo association, getting the deeds and everything else. But it might be in our best interest to make sure that those units get onto the SHI so that they're there when we need them. So that's the only update I wanted to give. We'll monitor. Yes, Mary.
Keith, do you have any updates on what's happening with the Novo project? Do we have any?
No, nothing that I've heard and nothing that they owe. After the chair's breakfast, we stood and chatted about what the status is. Hadn't the ZBA as of then has not heard anything from Novo. There are a number of steps that Novo needs to take with the balance of its property, including getting permitting the parking garage. I think that they is needed for the parking spaces needed for the rest. That would go through the ZBA process. We thought as well that the interest rates hadn't fallen yet, so perhaps Novo and others are looking for those sorts of signals from the economy. But it's certainly something that I think we all need to monitor. And I don't know if any town staff have had further indications about the status, but the ZBA chair had not heard anything yet. So we ought to keep an eye on Novo and be helpful and encouraging. So that's it on the subsidized housing inventory. The next topic, and I'll just mention briefly on funding for the trust. I mentioned earlier about the community preservation application. I think it's that we've submitted and that will be heard on October 8th at 7 p.m., a week from tonight. It's interesting to note that the CPC this year received 7 applications totaling $1.5 million, which is less than the $1.8 or $9 million, which I think they're projecting that they'll have. And if you take out the $240,000 that we've applied for, not from fiscal 26 funds, but from old funds from fiscal 21, it seems to indicate there's about $600,000 that CPC could be spending next for this coming year and won't because they didn't have applications. That's not necessarily a bad thing if there were some other projects in the wings that are going to cost a lot of money. And those funds can be available in the future. I don't know that the CPC has a multi-year planning process. Some of the things that we're looking at are coming multi years or years from now. Junction Village development, the 91B Main development. If there's a housing component with affordable housing at MCI Concord, these are all things in the future for which funds might be put aside. Yes, Linda.
So it's my understanding that should there be a need for emergency housing, that an application can be filed after the CPC date of September, whatever it was, September 13th, 18th, whatever it was, on the basis that an opportunity for acquiring property or developing a unit is time limited in terms of the market. So that's something that might be worth investigating.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, Linda's point is they'll take applications outside of their deadline if it's an emergency. That's your point, right, Linda?
Correct.
Yeah.
Under, with specific situations, obviously.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. But it's also the case that they have funding guidelines. And that is to say, they have to set a certain amount of funds aside for various categories within their funding array. And I would suspect that if I haven't done the arithmetic, but if our request to CPC for 700,000, Keith, it's broken down into current funds and prior funds, though. And I think, but that might exhaust all of the funds that are set aside on an annual basis for housing. I just haven't done that.
So I think there's Mike, to your point, and there may be some nuances there also, but as long as the 10% minimum is met for, certain categories, including housing, and as long as the need is described in the existing CPC plan, annual plan,
Right.
I think this is a potential avenue to pursue.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Somebody should do the arithmetic and just make sure what amount of money could be available.
Right. Thanks. Those are good comments. I've taken my video off just because it's not a good Wi-Fi connection for me today, but I know that let's say the total amount of current year funding is $1.8 million. So that means 180,000 is the 10% that would need to go for housing, a like amount for open space, and a like amount for historic. That's the only legal requirement, and the balance of the funds could either be kept in a general reserve fund or a specific reserve fund for a particular purpose. Rich?
Yeah, well, maybe you've answered my question, which is, can unexpended funds be rolled over to the next year in addition to that year's total? But it also, what Linda says, suggests to me that if either CHA or CHTC have their eye on a buy down, maybe that ought to come forward as, whatever they're looking at isn't going to be there a year and a half from now. We
Yeah, I
could
guess
even potentially front that money from the trust and, because I know the CPC money isn't available till next July.
Yeah, I guess my thought in general would be for that because of the time delay for whatever the application is for to put it in for the CHDC or the Housing Authority to put it in an application to the Community Preservation Committee for funds that will be available on July 1st. There's no chance that either of those groups could take advantage of whatever opportunity it is. And we have a balance that could be drawn from if it's part of our plan. Mary?
I believe that
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
um, I can wait, Linda. You want to
Well, I
respond?
was just going to follow up on Keith's comment.
Go ahead.
Again, I do think that the money could be awarded anytime up to the town meeting when it was, when the entire recommendations were voted on.
Okay, so I guess I'd like to understand more what constitutes an emergency. And do you have any, but put that aside for just a minute. I think the CHDC, if I'm not mistaken, already has an old allocation from CPC for money for specifically for a buy down. I think that's one of the reasons why at their, not today's meeting, but at a prior meeting, they were specifically targeting Concord Green, which perked my ears up. And I'd like to talk about that in the context of our buy down policy in general. Maybe not right this minute because we have to close out the CPC discussion. But I do know that they do have an allocation sitting in reserve that was allocated to CHDC for a buy down. So they've already got some money there. CHDC does.
Right, and they got the supplemental funding to bring their balance up to $500,000 for their buy down program. And I know they were discussing it. Liz, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I could just say, because I'm right here and I have some information that might be helpful to the conversation. That in order to do a buy down with the, without knowing the exact property, so you don't know the exact numbers, $500,000 is not enough cash to actually accomplish the transaction. So in the end, it might be, but you need cash up front to purchase the property. You have your closing costs, maybe you have a little bit of renovation, and then you'd sell it to an eligible buyer, and then they have some proceeds coming back in, which can recycle through, but they need a little bit more cash up front in order to do anything. So that was part of the discussion that they were trying to figure out, like how to get that other piece of cash in to actually purchase a unit wherever. I think that in terms of what would be an emergency, I think that a bare minimum would be something with an address, right? Like that you wouldn't have an emergency for something that didn't have a specific, you might have other criteria also, but just from a shorthand, like this would just be something to throw around, right? Like that you would have like a specific address, right? So it wouldn't be just like, I'm thinking of doing this program, or I want to be ready in case something comes up. It would be that I have this actual thing. But I don't know enough about how, for CPC, like I think you have to go to town meeting. So you can't be too market sensitive because you're going to be going to town meeting anyway, right? So even if you had an address, I mean, it can't be too much of an emergency because you're going to have to wait 7 months. Right, or whatever the time frame is.
I was wondering if CPC had more specifics as far as helping us understand what they mean by an emergency.
Yeah,
If they're
but
gonna relax,
I'm
they're
saying that they
relaxing
can't,
their-
emergency or not, you have to wait for the money, so you can't need it that quickly.
Oh, good point. Okay.
So you might feel like it's an emergency, but you're still waiting to get the cash or the
That's a good
allocation
point.
or the
That's right.
appropriation or whatever.
So
Right, and what I'm,
I
and
think
what
the
I'm not,
mechanism, I
what
think
I'm
the
not
mechanism.
recalling, go ahead, Linda, and then I'll wait.
I just think the mechanism needs to be explored further.
I agree. I mean, one of the mechanical questions is, I don't have a comprehensive knowledge of everything that's in the town meeting warrant, but I'm just wondering if their recommendations in the warrant article are specific rather than general. Maybe I think isn't it a multi-part article with a bunch of things that are in there, and that's when the warrant gets closed, presumably.
Yeah,
Uh,
the warrant could be amended.
You couldn't add on, you know, a $600,000 emergency that's not in the warrant.
That would be the moderator's call, and I doubt she would.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't-
I
That's
think
the
the larger issue, I want to raise the advice I gave the CHDC this morning was that rather, because it was a long conversation about the buy down program, and I'm not sure, you know, they're their own group. I'm not so sure that if I were sitting at that table, that that would be my highest priority for housing funds. That we've got Junction Village, we've got, you know, 91B Main Street. There are all sorts of other things that might be that will require funding. And if we're spending money on a, you know, a buy down here and a buy down there, and we've only got a total, I mean, our total project cost, once we assembled all the money, is $2.7 million of what we would have to spend. And any one of those big projects that we might want to help on would eat up all of that. And if we don't have funds available when those other projects need to go forward, I'd be concerned about that. But that's a holistic discussion that ought to be had, I think, amongst all the housing groups of what our priorities are and how we can best achieve them. So. And I know I was watching the CPC meeting this afternoon from last week, and there was they had quite a discussion about the 2001 funds that had not. Oh, sorry, I couldn't be at that meeting because the only thing in front of them was 233,000 that they'd given them, and no one spoke up and said, well, what about the 266 that the trust put in to reach 500,000, and still nothing's been spent. So anyway.
So Keith, when would be a good time to have a conversation amongst this group about buy down? Is that part of the update to the housing production plan? Is that the appropriate time, or do you want to have it with all the housing community, or what is?
Well, yeah, I think it would be appropriate. The CHDC is having their own discussion now, and I think it's about the buy down program, and we'll be having a further discussion about it. And we ought to, you know, we could invite them to talk to us about it, and have our own discussion. Even to set the table though for that discussion, I expressed my concern that there's bigger, you know, that the buy down program is not in isolation. It's not like we have, you know, infinite sources of funding to pay for all the things that we might want to do, and therefore that we might want to prioritize how the funds are used, and that we the housing groups together need to have it. And maybe the discussion ultimately, after we've had individual discussions among the groups, maybe the group discussion is at a housing roundtable in December.
Okay, then I think it might be appropriate, and stop me if you think it's not, for me to just share with this group a letter that I wrote to the CHDC as a taxpayer, and my thoughts on the buy down program, because I heard that CHDC was targeting a unit at Concord Green. I live in Concord Green. I have to be clear about that. And when I first heard of that, I thought that was a great idea. In fact, I sent Liz some information about units that were for sale in Concord Green. But then as I thought about it more, I thought two things. I agree with what Keith said earlier about how it's taking money that could be bundled with other money to buy more units at a lower cost per unit. But also I realized that a lot of the homes here in Concord Green are one of the already affordable units in Concord's housing inventory. They're naturally affordable. And we've got many people here that aren't means tested, but are living on fixed incomes and live here in Concord Green. That's not exclusively that, but I think there are a lot of people here. So it seemed kind of counterproductive to me to take a unit that's organically affordable, spend net $400,000 to make it affordable. So that kind of got me thinking. I'm not going to oppose buying a unit at Concord Green now because I don't, it's not, I just want to be clear that it's not that it's in Concord Green that bothers me, but I would question seriously buying a unit in some other, there aren't very many available, but some other naturally affordable units within Concord to, take them off of the affordable market, in the market and then make them affordable. So I think I've explained myself, and that was in the letter that I sent to CHTC.
Well, in some ways, it's a question about what we call affordable. But I think the issues that I agree with Mary about is, using our funds to sort of maximize the number of housing units we can bring online. And I would encourage us, Keith, to get a hold of all the housing folks and to make sure they all get this on their agenda. And then I think it probably should be then a joint topic after each of the groups has had a chance to discuss it at a housing roundtable. But this is important, and I think we should wrestle this issue to the ground and figure out where we stand on it.
Agreed. Thanks, Mike. Rich?
Just quickly, I understand Mary's concern, particularly about the quote naturally affordable units, but I'm not necessarily opposed to a buy down, particularly of a smaller house that's going to be a tear down otherwise, because that's not going to be affordable, even in the broader sense. So particularly if we could use a bit of our money as working capital, say a two-year loan to rehab the house and get it back on the market or whatever, that's going to produce a house a lot sooner than we're going to see anything at Junction Village. So I don't want to take a naturally affordable unit off, but if it's going to become a $2 million house and we can buy it for 600 or buy it and fix it up for 600, then maybe we ought to do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Rich. Liz?
Yeah, I was going to just echo that a little bit differently. I think by restricting the units, and you can pick what kind of level, you could be at a high moderate level, which really approximates like $600,000 really, or 500, you can get into that kind of price point. You're preserving that natural affordability level. So in a market where your prices are going to go up over some kind of decades, over the longer term, you're keeping an affordability, you're keeping that natural affordability where the market might not keep the natural affordability. I'll just say that. So it offers that. Naturally, affordability might not stay with you. So that's all.
Great. Thanks all for the comments. We'll schedule this discussion for future meeting, and the discussion I would say is not only buy downs, but also to take a look at what our priorities would be for spending the limited dollars that the trust has, and to have that discussion with plenty of input from our housing partners, since we want to be not at cross purposes. We want to be working together. So thank you all. I mentioned earlier ARPA funds for 91B Main Street. That's thanks again to the town. I want to call on Rich Feely, who is on the LOHA Coalition Steering Committee, to see what's up. I know from discussions that I've had with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council Government Affairs team, that while they're encouraging of continuing to submit home rule legislation for a real estate transfer fee, the communities need to be smarter and more strategic about it than perhaps being all over the board as we were this year. And I think we'll be looking for leadership from the LOHA coalition, and whatever the results of that are, I think would be important for us to, for example, if there's a model home rule petition that can come out of that. So it doesn't confuse the legislators so much with vastly different ones coming from communities that are even located near each other. That we ought to be looking at what those options are, and then asking the select board to put an article in the annual town meeting warrant for next June to refile something for home rule petition. Rich, how are?
Yeah, along
you
those
going?
lines, some of the Senate leaders behind the different transfer fee bills, particularly Senator Sear and Senator Edwards, are apparently talking about trying to come up with something approximating, if not a model bill, a more consolidated bill that they can get behind and say, hey, the big cities are behind this, the resort communities are behind this, and maybe towns like Concord as well. So that's cooking. The coalition is working now on trying to improve its own internal organization so we can get faster turnaround when we need, lots of correspondence to representatives because the real estate industry clearly outperformed us on that last session. Yeah, I think that's moving forward, but I am concerned that we get what we need to get into the town meeting warrant. Keith, I hate to go back, but I have one very quick question. In reading the material on 91B Main, it looked like the federal government would only sell it if it was 100% affordable or 100% AMI. Couldn't we go higher with workforce housing?
I'm not plugged in enough to know what the answer to that is.
That's in one of the documents that circulated. Maybe Liz or somebody can resolve that. But because I'm all in favor of workforce housing there, but I have a feeling workforce may be more like 120 than 100.
Well, yeah, workforce housing is it's clear to me the workforce housing is the town's priority for the use of the $500,000 we're getting in ARPA funds. And then the issue becomes whether pursuing that gets us in a discount on the sales price. It may not, or it may not be much of one, but we're getting the cash I mean, the property's been assessed at, or appraised rather at 600,
Yeah.
$650,000. So let's assume no discount, then then we would just need to come up with another $150,000 in non-ARPA funds to acquire the property. But the yeoman's effort is being made, though, to try to convince the state or federal government to offer the property for less than market value based on whatever the development proposal is for, how many units at what levels. And I think those are some of the answers that the consultant that's been hired by CHDC with town funds is looking at. Haven't seen the results of that work yet, though. Mary?
So CHDC is the point group here for this property, and are they the ones that are having conversations with, I guess it's the federal government, and are we getting any of our state reps or congressional delegates involved in any of these conversations? I mean, I guess
Yeah,
No,
that's a
no, they're not
that's a
doing that
Carrie-
at all. They're
that's a Carrie question.
that's a Carrie question.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think both groups are having conversations over the last however many years. I know CHDC or Liz, you've had some conversations, we've had some conversations.
only with the town. I've only participated
okay.
under the town. So the CHGC has not had any conversations by themselves.
Yeah,
Only
okay, so,
invited in through the planning office.
yeah, so town staff at various points in time has had conversations with different state agencies
Right.
and our legislative delegation.
And
So
the state agencies had asked for, if you wanted a waiver to the purchasing at appraisal, you had to present a plan. And so the town asked if the CHDC would take the initiative on the plan, producing the plan, and that was it. It wasn't to take the action on acquiring the property or any of that. It was just to produce the plan, really, for the town. So it was just, that's as far as it really has gone so far.
Can I continue? So this is very helpful for me because I'm trying to just get up to speed with this, especially since the select board gave the thumbs up to the $500,000. Has the work that we contracted to, I think it's Dillis and Roy, to give us a conceptual plan, is that underway, or do we know when that's going to be completed?
They have done 2 plans to date, and we've been reviewing them with the planning department and seeing what might work in terms of access and this, and so very kind of high level concepts.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's really 3, 4, or 5 units tops kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's really not, it's not like a major plan. I mean, in terms of like density and all that, and just try to kind of configure.
I feel
and
like
nothing has been done in terms of numbers, in terms of AMI and dollars and development costs or pro forma sources and uses. Nothing has been done on that level. That would be the next part.
I feel like at one point Marcia Rasmussen said 6 units. So let's think 6.
No, I don't think, I don't think so. That's what we did. So that Dillis and Roy went out and they marked, it's more than half the property is wet, and they did a flagging of the wetlands. Even the 5 units, the CHDC was advised through the planning department to scale it back. And the planning department doesn't like the 4 units even. So that's where we are.
Yeah, I know, well, speaking for myself, as a trust member, I'd like to know a lot more about this site that we're getting money for to purchase than I know now.
Yeah.
So if there's work that's been done, and I mean, I thank the town. The trust has had on our radar screen for several years now, pursuing 91B Main Street at the surplus state property, and delighted to get ARPA funds to be able to pursue that. But if there's work being done and we're not being included in it, I would ask that we be included in the future.
Yeah, and I would certainly want to know why they wouldn't do 4 units. I mean, there may be reasons, but I mean, that becomes very, if you can get a bit of a discount, then your land cost goes down to 125,000 a unit. That looks pretty attractive.
Maybe the unit sizes are too big. If I were at home, I'd be talking to you from 575 square feet.
Bless you for your small footprint, Keith.
Thanks. It's thank Henry David Thoreau. So the inspiration. All right, so we'll have further discussion. Be happy to be part of future discussions that the town convenes on 91B Main Street, and thank the CHDC as well for the work that they're doing on that, and the willingness to be part of the conversation so that we can all figure out what's the best way to develop that property. And I'm mindful of the time. I just want to quickly report that the several votes that were taken at our last meeting regarding funding for housing production plan projects. We're still working on the Assabet River bluff. I know there are conversations going on between CHDC and the Housing Authority and Town Council to help us prepare for whatever grant agreement or amendment to the mortgage or whatever legal documents we need for the to package the $1 million grant that we approved at the last meeting. On Junction Village, as you know, we set aside 50,000 for in the hopes of the Junction Village property being part of the MCI Concord planning process, and I so reported on the trust's behalf at the DCAM hearing. So appreciate that opportunity. Small grants program, town council has also been dispatched to get us a hopefully just a grant agreement amendment that we can use to extend the small grant program for another year with the additional dollars. So those things are in the works, and thanks to Kerry for letting Mina work on these things for us. Any updates from on other housing, any housing projects from CHDC or the Housing Authority? So I think
Not at the moment from the Housing Authority. We will be the recipients at some point of the 2 units at 402 Old Marlborough Road, so we're looking forward to that. And we continue to provide management maintenance services there as needed.
very good. Thanks all for all the work that you're doing, and thanks for working with us, and we're happy to all be working together and pulling in the same directions. And now we've come to public comment. Is there any comment from the public? All right, well, thanks for joining us tonight. Ray Andrews. Hello, Ray.
Right. Okay. Struggling with the video here. My makeup person was. Here we go.
We can see your hand. Okay. Oh, there you are.
That's my best part. Couple thoughts. When Linda was talking about the CPC being able to consider funds for an emergency or take advantage of an opportunity, I thought that was sort of the reason for the rationale or the primary focus of the trust being created, so that if we don't have a specific project, but that there's funds in the CPC, that they could go to the trust fund as well as going to a categorically defined fund retained by the CPC. Well, that was the question I had, and also the one thing I wanted to mention about buy down program. Yes, I think buy downs are a more expensive way to provide a unit than other programs that, I mean, the NOVO and that sort of thing. However, the buy down does create a workforce housing, which is a focus that we're trying to address, and it also is ownership as opposed to rental units. So there are some benefits to ownership. I think Liz is quite good at explaining what those are, but certainly it's a benefit to produce an opportunity for family wealth building and community involvement, and maybe other benefit to the community. Thank you.
Also, I'd just add on to that, Ray, the other benefit is, embedding housing in various parts of the community rather than cluster housing. So
Right. Right.
And it
Thanks
can
all for
happen
the comment.
faster too.
Very good. Yeah, I certainly think that, I mean, I'm pleased with the way the system's working this year, that we were able to submit a comprehensive application for $740,000, which is more than we asked for in one sitting from CPC. if I was hearing their conversation from their meeting last Tuesday, that we were put in the category of well, non-controversial, dare I say routine. That it was there were a bunch of other applications that they saw as ones that caused a lot of questions. And they thought they had a lot of answers from us about what we were doing and how we'd spend the money. So I appreciated that.
I
So,
agree.
yeah. Thank you. So our next meeting date, today's October 1st. I'm looking for looking to see what else. Should we look for October 29th? Or I don't want to go for a month from today because that's election day.
Let's get the 29th on the books and,
Looks okay to me.
yeah.
Does that look good, Carrie? October 29th at 5 p.m.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, October 29th. And I'm going to ask, I'm not going to be able to attend the Concord Chairs Breakfast on October 16th. I'll be in an off-grid in a dune shack in Provincetown, Cape Cod National Seashore. But I'm going to ask our vice chair, who I know will be at the Chairs Breakfast, Mary, to just, I'll email just the high points of what we might want to share with the group. So thank you. And thanks for convening that. I'll miss it because it's the best hour that you can spend on town business and get the most information. So
Yeah, it is.
and no
I'll be happy.
question and usually no questions too. Just
I
the
know the
important
chair doesn't,
information.
the chair doesn't allow that. Yeah, I'll be happy to represent the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay. Thanks very much. All right. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Motion and a second. And we will take a roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
yes.
Linda,
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Rich,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
and Keith, aye. And we are adjourned at 6:23 p.m. Thanks all very
Thank
much.
you.
Take
Everybody.
care. Bye now.